Good evening, everybody. My name is Betsy. I'm an addict. I would really rather be over there listening to Natasha, but here I am. As it is to many of us and most of us, Ripley is a really special place to me. Neither my life nor recovery journey started in Ohio, but I've been in Ohio now for 21 years. And I think I moved there in 94, and I think the first time I came to Ripley, I think was spring of 96. And I've been here twice a year, almost every year since. The only time I can remember missing was, 14 to 16 years ago, when I had twins that were babies and really young, and their father thought that it was too much to stay home alone with them for a weekend. So I stayed home and did what I needed to do. I'm just going to jump right in. I grew up in upstate New York. I first found recovery in New York. About 2 minutes of qualifying what it was like for me. I'm not one of those people that ever crossed the line. As soon as I picked up, I was over. I don't understand using anything in any other way. It's not my experience. It's not what I was ever able to do. A real turning point for me was when I was 15 years old. I had a boyfriend that was killed in a car accident, and every authority figure in my life punished me that week in ways that I felt were unfair and unjust. And so I decided that at that point, I hated every authority figure. It didn't matter what anybody told me to do. Doing the right thing didn't matter. I didn't care. And I just didn't want to feel, and I didn't want to care anymore, and I knew how to do that. And I had lots of people that were willing to help me. Take a little of this, have a little of this. And I can tell you that I quite honestly don't remember anything for the next 3 months. And part of it, and if I go back into detail, there are things that I remember, but it's always really hard to put it in real chronological order because there's those missing pieces and I never quite remember what happened when. And it doesn't really matter. It just tells me what that was like. I was always really fortunate that I had a lot of people that looked out for me and helped to take care of me and keep me out of trouble. So there was a lot of trouble that I didn't get into, not because I didn't qualify for it, but because I was protected from it. My custody went back and forth between my parents. My parents were two different extremes. One was really strict, and the other one would give me money and drive me to go cop dope. Guess which one I prefer to live with? And I did until that parent wasn't capable of going to work and living up to his responsibilities. So I found other ways to supplement taking care of myself because there was nothing to eat in that house. And I didn't tell anybody. And I didn't know how to ask for help, and I didn't know how to tell anybody that anything was wrong, because it came from that. If you can't solve it within your immediate family, you just find a way to live with it and deal with it. Don't tell anybody anything. I look back at that part, and I was still a minor and a child, and I had other adult relatives that lived in the same town. Not only didn't I not ever ask them, it never occurred to me that I could. Years later, and I remember having a conversation with my aunt, and she was like, "Why didn't you ever come to me and ask me for help? I would have done anything to help you." It's like, because I couldn't go to you. You're my father's sibling. I couldn't do that. So I found ways to deal until it became obvious to friends who found that they had to be even more stubborn than I was to force me to go do things I didn't want to do and tell people things I didn't really want to tell them. So it went back and forth. And during my senior year, I lived with my older brother who had custody of me. And that was a blast. He was dealing at the time, and there were people that showed up with things at 6 a.m. and it went on all day. And at whatever point in time I passed out, somebody just picked me up and threw me in my bed. And if I didn't want to go to school, I didn't go. I did what I wanted to do, and I didn't do anything else. And for me, at the time where I lived, being legal was 18. And I can tell you, for me, by the time I was legal, I was no longer having fun. I no longer had a choice, and I didn't know what to do. So I just kept doing what I was doing. In that same time period, around the time I started using, somewhere in there, my mother got remarried, and she left one drunk and went and found another one, and he went through treatment and started to go to AA. And they used to have these get-togethers and have these people come over that were smiling and happy and had these shining eyes, and they made me sick. And I just wanted to get away and go do what I wanted to do. But I had that exposure. So when I got ready to come here, and it wasn't really any one particular major event, I was just done. Drugs didn't work for me anymore, and I was pissed. I didn't want to feel anything I was feeling. I didn't know what to do with it or do about it. And I thought I was losing my mind. I was living in college housing at the time, because I always had the idea that if I could do the things I was supposed to do on the outside, at least to some extent, and if I could look good on the outside, then maybe I could convince you that my insides were okay. So even though I dropped out of high school, I took my GED and pretended to go to school. And I was living in college housing with other people who were a lot like me. And I can remember for a month wishing that every night that some men in little white coats would come and take me away someplace and lock me up and throw away the key and tell me when to eat and tell me when to sleep, because it started to look really good to me. And that didn't happen. There was one person at the time that I knew, over 30, that I trusted, and she was a friend of my family's, and she had been sober in AA for about 4 years. So when I got ready to ask for help, she was the person I called. And that was on February 5th in 1981 in upstate New York. And at that time, there was no Narcotics Anonymous in upstate New York. So my early recovery is all AA, because that's what there was. And it used to be real funny about sharing about that, because being in areas where there was a lot of animosity, but I came to understand my story is my story, and I got here when I got here, and if that hadn't been there, I don't think I would have lived long enough for Narcotics Anonymous to show up in upstate New York. What I've come to understand and figure out is that NA happened like in Ohio and West Virginia a lot earlier than it did in New York, because New York had those Rockefeller laws. And when I first showed up in AA, I was 18. The next youngest person around was like in their late 20s. And when you're 18, somebody who's 29 looks really old. And it's really funny for me to say that today, standing here with all this gray hair. But at the time, I thought my life was over. I thought I was never going to have fun again, and my life was just done. And I walked into a room full of people that, because of my stepfather, now he died before I came. He'd been dead a couple of years, but they all knew him. And they all heard him talk about me. So I didn't walk in with all this anonymity and nobody knew anything about me. Most of those people could have written my 4-step for me. They knew what belonged on it. What I came to find out is an awful lot of those people had been praying me in the rooms and had been saving me a seat. And they were willing to do anything to help me. And they did. I didn't drive. Nobody in my family would let me get a license. I don't understand. And it's not that I didn't borrow their cars on occasion, because I did. But I didn't have a license. And every night before I left a meeting, there was a plan made for who was going to pick me up and take me to a meeting the next night. And that happened every night for me for about a year and a half, until I could drive myself. As odd as it is, I remember those feelings in those early meetings that I felt like for the first time in my life, I was in a room full of people that understood something about what made me tick. Because there was always something about me that was a little different, and I didn't know what it was. And I was finding some place where I felt like I belonged. And it took me a long time to really understand anything. I really couldn't comprehend what was being said for the first 6 months. And there was this old man who had 33 years, and I would go to him, and he would feed me one-liners in doses that I could understand, something I could figure out, to give me enough to keep me coming back. That woman who took me to my first meeting became my first sponsor. And the longer I've been here, the more grateful I am for those people that were around me that gave me the beginning and gave me my foundation. To the best of my memory, I think that it was somewhere between the time when I had like 4 or 5 years in that Narcotics Anonymous meetings started in upstate New York, in the Syracuse area, Utica, Oneida, and there was somebody that had moved from another state that helped start those early meetings. And those early meetings were particularly crazy. And my view of it at first was it was very much a rebel fellowship. I'd been in recovery long enough that I needed to go to meetings for the right reasons. And so I didn't really have a lot to do with it for the first year. And I knew people that were going to NA meetings and talking to people. And there wasn't a lot of literature around, but I gradually came to understand that I really fit. And I can remember sitting in early meetings and doing step work and having step meetings out of a little white book. And those early members really stuck together and hung together, really trying to do something and do something different. And in time it grew, even though it was really crazy. Part of what happened in that area was there were correctional facilities for people from the city, as in New York City, and people that didn't want to get out and they didn't want to go back to the city and wanted to be someplace else would come to the community and come to the meetings. And some of those meetings were pretty hardcore. I remember some of those early business meetings that were chaired with pistols on the table, and I remember meetings where I was not allowed to go to them unless I took not 1 but 2 male escorts. But I went, because that's what there was and that's what we did. So sometimes today it seems kind of soft to me from what it used to be. Because most of the people in the room were packing, and I was comfortable. They didn't scare me. They were just people just trying to figure out a way to live different and to save our lives. I was always taught about service from the beginning, and I've had the opportunity to do a lot of different kinds of service. I have met some wonderful people through service. I've lived in 5 different states since I first got here, so getting involved in service always helped me meet people that were really dedicated and committed to the recovery. I stayed in, I left New York and I went to Connecticut for a while, and I went back to New York for a while. I've lived in Massachusetts, so a lot of the first part was in the Northeast, and I've been in Ohio for about 21 years. Purposely not really going by chronological order of things, because there's just too much history, so just thinking of different areas. But I was always taught what the basics are from the beginning, and to hold on to those. And the basics were go to meetings, get a home group, have a sponsor, work steps, get involved, be connected, ask my higher power for help on a daily basis, and to continue to do those things. Usually when something's not working, it's because I've stopped doing one of those things. Fortunately for me, I've always enjoyed going to meetings. I've always made sure that I have a home group and that I show up to it. Actually, part of my home group meets tonight, and I'm obviously not there. But they know where I am, and I think I have a few other home group members in this room tonight. One of the areas that I really struggled with when I got here was the concept of a higher power. Traditional beliefs didn't work for me. And for the first three years that I was around, I can tell you that anytime the topic at a meeting was the 3rd or 11th step, I had to sit on my hands and make myself stay in that room, because I just wanted to bolt and I just wanted to run. And I can remember asking older members that had been around for a long time if I really needed to believe in a higher power in order to stay here. And I was told, well, go ask like 30 people what they believe in, and ask people that you like their recovery, find out what they're doing, and then figure out what you need to do. Well, being a good addict, go ask 30, then I'd go and ask 90. And I found it really confusing, because if you talked about the first step and life being unmanageable and being powerless, whoever you talked to would pretty much tell you the same thing. And when you talked about the second step, people would pretty much tell you the same thing. But when it came to trying to figure out what a definition was of a higher power that worked for me, well, if I asked 90 of you, you probably gave me at least 180 different ideas. And I had no idea what was for me. So the way I did that is I would listen, and I would take pieces of, you said something like, well, maybe I could try that. And I would try it. And I gradually tried to become more open-minded to try things like, yeah, that doesn't really sound like me, but maybe I can try it. So I don't have any original ideas or original concept of a higher power. In the beginning, it was the pieces that I took from the people that I came in contact with who were doing something, and I liked the way they lived their lives, and I wanted to have some of what they had. One of the things that really sent me searching, right around the time I celebrated my 4th anniversary, my older brother and only brother ended up in the hospital on an oncology ward. And a few months later, he died of leukemia. And I was really angry. And I can remember people saying to me, how can you be angry at a God that you don't believe in? It doesn't make any sense. You can't get angry at something you have no relationship with. And I was really angry. And I didn't even know who or what I was angry at. It didn't make any sense to me. And that sent me on a real spiritual search, real spiritual journey. And I talked to a lot of different kinds of people. And again, taking from you what worked for me and leaving the rest. And some of the people that helped me the most, I never would have thought they'd be the ones that helped me the most. One of those people was a Catholic priest. I never thought in a million years he'd be the one that would help me, but he helped me a lot. And I just took the different pieces of what worked, because I couldn't just live life stuck in that anger, just being so angry. And I had to deal with the anger of that one over again later. And I don't know, 5 years ago, I'm going to be real careful how I tread on this, because I'm not bringing in outside issues. I'm just talking about my own stuff. But there was information that I became aware of that the cause of his death was due to some toxic things that he was exposed to. And I got really angry, and I had to go deal with all that again. And it was somebody here who was a really close friend who really helped me with that, and decided what I wanted to do with that wasn't going to go after anything. It wasn't worth it. He was dead. There's no way to bring him back. But needed information to get out there so that other people would know. And the way to do it was to share his story and to give him a voice. So somebody helped me do that. And I remember going through that process and talking to people and like, you know what? He wouldn't want me to stay angry. He'd want me to find a way to let it go. Because sometimes there's things I just can't change. And being here, you know, a lot of this has just been about growing up and finding ways to accept life on life's terms. It's really easy to do when my will and my higher power's will coincide, but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes we're really different, and sometimes I don't like it, but I got to find a way to be okay with it. Before I came here, I thought that the whole world should revolve around me, and it didn't, and that gave me lots of excuses to use. And after I got here, I found out that there were a lot of things in the world I didn't like, and I was going to have to find new ways to adapt. Having been here for a bit, I got to a place where life became pretty peaceful, became pretty comfortable in my own skin. After working some steps, I could look at myself in the mirror in the eyes, and I could look any of you in the eyes. I didn't have to cross the street. I didn't have to walk around hanging my head or feeling guilty. And I like living that way, and I like feeling that way. And so today I'm willing to do the work to continue to be able to live that way. There are a lot of things that we have to do here that are really important. You know, we have to show up, and I need to go to meetings and need to be involved. But I still have tapes in my head from those early meetings when I first heard people say things that stuck. And one of those tapes in my head is that the person I was who walked in the doors would pick up again. And if I wanted to stay, I needed to change. And the way to change was through working the steps. And a lot of times we have a lot of opinions about the way people should do things and the only way to do things. And a lot of times it doesn't really matter. It's really about the process and the end results. There are a whole lot of us that worked a whole lot of steps long before that step working guide came out and managed to stay here for a long time. And then there are a whole lot of people that have come here since, and their only experience is using that step working guide. Neither one is wrong. It's just different experiences. But it's about the process, and it's about doing the work, and it's about cleaning house on the inside. I've become even more aware the longer that I've been here that if we miss pieces, it shows up later. And I've seen that, and I've experienced that. I've been hurt myself by the pieces that other people haven't done. So I say that, and you know, you run around and play in early years and think, I got this thing, I got this thing, I got this thing. And sometimes those pieces that we missed don't really show up and kick our ass till a couple decades later. And I've seen that. And I'm willing to speak to it because I don't want to see it happen to other people. there's something around about that 21-year mark. And I can think of a handful of people, and some of those people that have been close to me, that something has really happened, and they've really gone off the deep end. And it doesn't mean they've picked up again, but that ability to live happy, joyous, and free goes away. And I don't want that to happen. It doesn't make sense to me to come here and work at this thing 3/4 of the way for a couple of decades and then be miserable for the rest of it because we didn't do something. And there are a lot of things that I've had to learn that you don't really know how to do unless we find other people with that kind of experience. Nothing really tells us how do you walk through divorce with somebody else that's in the rooms. Been there, done that one. And we had a conversation and said, we have a lot of mutual friends, and we don't really expect anybody to pick a side. But there are a whole lot of people that felt like they needed to pick a side. And it became really obvious to me at times. I'd be in meetings and I felt like I was in the land of the enemy. And it wasn't real comfortable. And I no longer felt like I could just open my mouth and be real and be comfortable. So instead of just going away, I traveled. I drove far enough away to where I had total anonymity, that I wasn't Betsy, I wasn't the person in the middle of a divorce whose almost ex-spouse was also in the rooms. I was just another anonymous addict. And thank you to those people in West Cleveland, because that's where I went. And I just got to be me. Sometimes it gets messy. I knew when I moved to Ohio, because by that time it was the 5th state that I had lived in. And I'd been here for a minute, and I knew that everybody who was clean in the state of Ohio when I got there could stay clean whether I showed up or not. But I needed you, because I couldn't do this thing by myself. Doesn't matter how long I've been here, I can't do it by myself. Need that connection to other recovering addicts. And I've been aware for a long time that I can have family members that I'm close to. My family can't save my ass. I was fortunate enough that I had a mother that understood that. I remember there were times my mother would say, I don't know how to help you, go call your sponsor. I didn't always like it, but she was usually right. She was like, I don't understand, it's not my experience, I don't know how to help you, so just go call your sponsor. This has been an incredible, really wild ride. And a lot of times we hear people speak and only share about how wonderful recovery is, and we think that all of it's wonderful. Well, recovery itself is wonderful, but life still happens and life still shows up. And it's not always fun, and it isn't always easy. But by being here, it means that I don't have to do it alone. And I have a whole lot of tools to find ways to walk through just about anything. And I've watched people here walk through some pretty incredible stuff, and wondered how they did it. As I said, I was 18 years old when I first showed up. I wasn't sure that I totally belonged, so I went out to do some more experimenting to prove to myself who and what I was. And it's really hard to go back out and comfortably use with a head full of knowledge. Even if I didn't think I really comprehended any of that, it was still in there. So my clean date is July 10th of 1981. And I didn't used to share that when I spoke. But I do, as it was explained to me, there are people that need to know that we can come here and we can stay here and stay here for a long time. It's funny because I know people that they tried to tell me that I had the opportunity to stay here and live a life and become that old person with gray hair. And if they were here today, they'd be laughing really hard. A lot of times at anniversaries anymore, half the rooms are full with people that were born after I got clean. And I will always, always have a soft spot for the teenagers and young 20s trying to come here and do this thing, because I was there. And I know there's times I think that I don't understand until I open my mouth and I know what it's like to be in that place. And as wonderful it is as it is to be here tonight, every single one of us can think about that last person we know that showed up here and decided to go out there and try something again, and they don't have the opportunity to be with us tonight. And that always breaks my heart. It makes me so sad. I'll never be able to explain why we get to come here and get exposed, but don't get to stay. So it means if I get to come here and I get to stay, I need to always appreciate it. I need to always have gratitude. And I need to always do what I can to make sure that this is here for that next person. To be aware that this needs to be here for a whole generation that isn't even here yet. So what we do with it is really important. How we treat each other is really important. We need to make somebody not want to go away. I shared about the peace with service, and I've done a lot of different kinds of service at the group level, at the area level, at the regional level. And I haven't done a lot of service in a little bit. And in my own experience at the regional level, it got really ugly and the treatment got really bad, and I resigned. Because when how we treat each other gets to the point that I need to put on emotional armor to walk in there, something's really wrong. When I got here, I lived behind walls. I had worked hard to build up those walls, and it took a lot of pain to take those walls down. And in order for me to live in my recovery, those walls need to stay down. And if walking into service meeting is going to make me start building those walls back up, something's wrong. And I've got to protect my own personal recovery first. I don't walk away easily. I don't take on commitments I can't fulfill. That was a really hard one for me. It's not who I am. It's not what I do. I followed through today. I finished things today. But I knew that for my personal recovery, I needed to do that. I've had the opportunity to put a lot of things together in my outside life since I've been here. And I know a lot of times when we first come here, that stuff is really important. One of those early tapes for me is been coming to meetings about 2 weeks, and somebody said that their life was so productive that they no longer would have time to use. And I really wanted that kind of life. Be careful what you pray for. I have that kind of life today, and I've had that kind of life for a long time. When I got here, I was not capable of reading the printed words on a page. You know, that person that was trying to go to school before I came here to look good on the outside, well, I had quit again because I was trying to do the substitute, different things that I use, trying to keep it together. And I found myself sitting in a classroom hallucinating and hadn't taken anything that should make me do that. So I decided what the problem was, that it must be me going to school. Because everything that was wrong with my life was always about that person, that thing, that job, that school. It wasn't about anything I was doing. So when I first came here, I didn't have the ability to really read and comprehend the printed word. I could read it over and over, and it just didn't make sense. And I can remember wondering if I would ever be able to comprehend again. And it took a while. But I am that person that went back to school and finished a bachelor's degree. And by trade, I'm an accountant. I play with all kinds of people's money. And sometimes with the amounts and the things that I do, it was some only knew. If they only knew who I used to be. But today I'm so careful with all that stuff. Because we come here, we have to work really hard to build both personal and professional integrity. And it means something to me today, and I'm not willing to do anything to compromise it. Even if something could possibly look funny, I won't do it, even if it isn't. I just don't want anything to even look funny. I've had lots of different kinds of jobs. I've been fired since I've been here. Sometimes when I've gotten fired, it was my higher power doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. And the only thing I could say was thank you. Today I have a job working for a family. And I know that family because a member of that family is here. So before I ever got interviewed, everybody in that family knew how we knew each other and what the connection was. So I work in a place where I have no anonymity. I had no anonymity walking in the door, and it's really cool and it's really okay. And it's really okay to talk about things openly. But I've been in places where it wasn't. Sometimes there's a part of me that wants to be a part of a group where nobody knows that I'm a recovering addict because I've been doing this thing my entire adult life. And I've had moments where I just wanted to be like a normal person, but I'm never going to be just that normal person that isn't an addict and needs to do something about it and remember who and what I am. There are a lot of people in this room that have had some pretty incredible relationships from different states. People that I sponsor, people that I used to sponsor, some people that I've known for a few years, some people that I've known for decades. And I've had some really wonderful relationships since I've been here. That person that introduced me, we walked through a lot of really major life stuff. She was there when my older daughter was born. She was my maid of honor. She came on and hung out with me last year when my mom died, and she was with me when my mother died. But I've also had the experience in being close to people here. I've been betrayed by people here more than once, and we don't talk about it. And sometimes I don't talk about it because I never want to say anything and scare a newcomer away. But sometimes we have to be careful. And what I've learned is, and think about the symbol on the side of the triangle, the people that I have for support, there better be more than one person and there better be more than one group. Because I've had times when one whole side of that triangle has slid away. And there needs to be something else. And we don't talk about it a lot, and there really isn't a lot in our literature about dealing with betrayal. What I've learned about dealing with betrayal, that it's a lot like dealing with a resentment. And I've had to pray for those people. And sometimes it starts out the same way it does with a resentment. It's really hard to pray for something nice for that son of a bitch day one. It's a little easier day two, but it's still not easy. But after that, it usually becomes genuine. And at the end of 30 days, sometimes I start over again. And sometimes at the end of another 30 days, I start over again. And sometimes I think it's resolved, so I stop. And then something happens and it creeps up again. So guess what? I got to start all over again. So there are some people that when they're not a part of my life, I've probably actually prayed for them more than when they were. In the time that I've been here, with all whatever outside stuff, one of the things that has probably been the most rewarding for me and that I've done the best job at is being a mom. And when I showed up, I didn't know how to take care of myself. I didn't do anything on any given day besides get up, take a shower, brush my teeth, and call my sponsor or somebody else to give me guidance of what I needed to do to get through a day. And I can remember being at a meeting when my older daughter, who just turned 26 on Wednesday, was about a month old, and thought, wow, I've come a long way. I have the ability to take care of this solely dependent little infant. And I know that my children have been affected and inspired by being here. I've heard my older daughter give her own rendition of the steps to friends that were dealing with issues. So there's my older daughter who's 26, and then I have those twins who are almost 17. I've watched those twins play meeting with stuffed animals. It's adorable. I've watched them as 2-year-olds be pissed off and say, me mad, me go meeting. I've had a child at times tell me, Mom, like, why don't you take a break and get out of here and go to a meeting and go do something for you? About 2 weeks ago, I was talking to my son about what his plans were and what he was up to, and he said he was going to something at a friend's house, but he needed to go meet his homecoming date's parents first. I said, okay. I said, so are you nervous? He said, no. You've been taking me to meetings. I've been talking to all kinds of adults my entire life. I'm not nervous talking to adults. I've been talking to all kinds of adults. I don't have any problem talking to adults. You showed me it's okay to just show up and be me. My children, fortunately or unfortunately, understand that parenting is a conscious choice because their other parents have chosen not to be a part of their life. And I will make this one judgment statement. I really don't understand how somebody with a couple of decades working on recovery can desert children, but that's been their experience. The other side of that is that I've made a different choice, and I choose to parent them. So they know I've made a choice, so I got a lot of love, and I got a lot of respect. And I don't get a lot of bad attitude. So that side of it I'm really grateful for. So yesterday, through changes in schedules and things, and I stopped home after I went to work and stopped home before I headed here. And I was gathering some things and I had things in my hand, and my son came in. It's a 16-year-old boy. And he turned me around and he took whatever I had in my hands and set him down. And he said, I'm not staying. I'm off to go somewhere with my friends. He said, but I just wanted to come see you before you leave. I wanted to give you a hug. I want to tell you that I love you, and I hope you have a good weekend. So that tells me that it was worth stopping home for one, and two, I've done something right. And I didn't know how to do anything for me when I got here, but I know how to do something for somebody else today. And it starts out, and we are so self-centered, so full of self. Sometimes I wish, we should almost like videotape somebody when they're really new and that core of self-centeredness, and take a look at it like 10 years later, 5 years later, about how self-centered it is. Because after a while, become less self-centered and more God-centered and more other-centered. And that it really is about being a service, and it really is about being there for each other. And the being there doesn't always mean that just patting you on the back when I see you're heading for trouble. Nobody patted me on the back and said, Bets, it's okay to keep fucking up and go kill yourself when I was new. They weren't afraid to pound their fists on the table, give me a kick in the ass, hit me on the back, and say, what the hell are you doing? And I've had other people do that for me since. I can think of a couple people in particular, and being initially so pissed that I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up on end. Like, don't you know who I am? How dare you? And then to realize how much it took for them to get my attention and say to me what they said to me to get my attention. Because we are only willing to go out there and do that for people that we really care about, because we don't want them to go off somewhere, to go use again, to walk into something that's really dangerous and not in their best interest. You know, and our text tells us we are each other's eyes and ears. And I have a responsibility. And it's a balance, and it's figuring it out of where that line is, of sharing the message and getting your attention, but I can't carry you or do your recovery for you. Because I've been in that place where I've gone too far for other people, and I've learned the hard way to scale that back and no. I can say something, I can make a suggestion, but what you choose to do with it is up to you. You know, and it's a lot, in some ways it's a lot different, and in some ways it's still the same. And I'm going to mention one thing, one of my real pet peeves, and then I'm about done. One of the things in looking around from up here tonight, I don't see a whole lot of people on cell phones. I sat in a workshop earlier today, and there wasn't a single person with their cell phone on. But I regularly sit at meetings, and I look down a whole line of people playing on their phones. I was told when I got here that I better sit right up front in that incurable row, and I better just stay there, never leave it, and I better pay attention. And they weren't afraid to say something to me if they didn't think I was paying attention. And I've never been afraid to say something to somebody else that I know if I don't think they're paying attention. I was at a meeting last Saturday night, and when people play on their phones, it distracts me. It does. I still get easily distracted. I need to be able to sit and focus. A lot of times, people will think I'm sleeping in meetings. I'm not. I will sit and close my eyes because it allows me to focus on a better level. And I'm sitting next to somebody playing on his phone. And I know him. He's a home group member. And I looked at him, I said, can I make a suggestion? He said, sure. And I said, why don't you put the damn phone in your pocket and go hug the newcomer? And he looked at me and he laughed. He said, okay, it's probably a good idea. I'll do it. And this isn't a popularity contest, and I'm not really afraid if somebody gets mad. If it needs to be said. In fact, I'm looking over and I'm sitting and I'm smiling at somebody. I know I said something to him about his phone one time, and he got really pissed at me. It's okay. But for that person, you know who you are, and I'm really glad you're here tonight, and I'm really glad you're still clean, and I still love you. I have been given so much. You know, and I listened to somebody earlier today talking about the difficulties in life with kids and with work and whatever, and it's like, you know, all those things that we have today that we like to bitch about, if we weren't here staying clean a day at a time, we wouldn't have any of those things. I wouldn't show up to work. I wouldn't be capable of being a parent that makes sure that their needs are met. And yeah, I am Mama Bear, I overdo it. If you saw what I bought to make sure they didn't starve this weekend, it's ridiculous. But I know that everything I have today is a direct result from being here. I've had periods of time where, and not too long ago, my most recent betrayal wasn't all that old. And for a minute I thought maybe I just wanted to go away. And I went to meetings and I was real open about it. And there are people in the area where I am, in the home group that I'm a part of, they thank me for still coming. I've gotten text messages for saying, thank you for saying what you said. Thank you for being real. I needed to hear what you had to say. Please just stay. So those times when I don't feel like showing up for me, I still have the ability to show up for you. And I hope I never lose that, because I know that I can think of a handful of other people that have been here as long as I have, and they choose not to show up anymore, and they choose not to participate. But there are so many people that are a part of my life today that I get to see that I would miss if I didn't get to have them as a part of my life. And I need to show up for that to happen. I need to show up to meet that person that hasn't shown up here yet. One of the greatest gifts of being here for a while is watching the people that come and get it. Every single one of us has like that person that's like the first miracle we got to witness. For me, that person is somebody, I was pretty new. And for I don't know how long, I lived like half a mile from a detox, and anytime somebody under 30 landed in detox didn't matter for what, they called me and they sent me. So I was asked by a bunch of senior members to go see this one girl. And I hadn't done it before, and I had no idea what I was going to do, and I had no idea what I was going to say. And I said, so what do I do? And they said, did you use today? And I said, no. And they said, go tell her how you did it. And she was somebody who was not only suffering from this, but from an eating disorder, and had a real live distended belly. And it said if she didn't start eating and stop doing what she was doing, she's going to be dead within a month. And I felt like that was a huge responsibility, because I was too new here to understand that I only had the responsibility of carrying the message, and saying what I could and doing what I could do. She did start eating and she did stop using, and I can remember being at her 5th anniversary celebration, and that time in between, she moved away, but she would always come home for holidays, and we had a tradition for a long time. We always got together on a holiday and went to a meeting, and I will never forget her. I will never forget that person. And I've had the opportunity to witness a whole lot more since, and the other side of those that don't make it. But I have a responsibility to be here, and I have a sponsee who always say, need to stay in the trenches no matter what. I'm still an addict. I went to a meeting not too long ago where we read the first chapter with a lot of reminders about what it was like, and I still need to remember, and I still need to go back there, because it still really is about not using. And from here, the journey does continue, and it's continuing spiritual growth. I am so glad that we don't have to decide what we believe in like the first 30 days we're here, and we got to live with that for the rest of the time we're here. Because about every decade for me, there's probably a pretty significant change in my understanding of my higher power and how that works for me, and have the ability to do that. It can be different tomorrow if it needs to be for me, and if it needs to just stay the way it is for the rest of my life, that's okay too. I know that I have about a year and a half before my twins graduate, and I'll get an opportunity to spend a lot more time taking care of myself, and being more involved and doing more things. And I look forward to that, because sometimes I've had to say no, and sometimes I haven't been able to maintain relationships to the extent that I would like to, because I have the responsibility of taking care of them and doing what I need to do. And I know that that's what I'm supposed to do right now. But they also understand that I need to be here. I'm going to share this, and then I think I'm done. A couple years ago, we were driving. We were on vacation. We were driving to go visit a relative, and I was about 5 minutes from a rest stop, and my son asked me, he said, "Mom, can I ask you a question or two?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "What are narcotics? Why did you use them? Why do you still go to meetings, and what do they do for you?" I was like, "You know what? We're going to stop in about 5 minutes, and it's going to take me a lot longer than 5 minutes to explain this to you. So let's hold it. Let's stop. Let me get a cup of coffee." And we got about 4 more hours of driving to go. And I shared a lot of my experience with them, and they have a greater understanding. I don't share it until they ask. But they asked, and they wanted to know. I kept it appropriate, being fully aware that I had teenagers, and they probably don't need to know every last thing that I did as a teenager, at least not now. But they do know who I am, and they know what I'm about, and they know what I do, and they know why. And it counts for a lot. It counts for a lot. I love this place. I really would have rather have gone to listen to Natasha, but I understand that this is about how Ripley works and about the being a service. It means different ones of us have to take turns at being this person. And for whatever reason, it was the timing that I got to be this person. And I'm at a place in life where it's pretty even. There isn't anything like incredible going on in my life that's wonderful or awful. It's just busy and kind of pretty even and pretty okay. And after some of the other periods of time, I'll take those somewhat boring days where there isn't anything really unusual. I've had enough of those drama-filled days. What I found out after I had been here for a little bit, that I no longer needed to create drama and have an excuse to use. And if that was its only purpose, I could really stop doing that. And that was a huge freedom. Life shows up enough on its own terms without me needing to shake it up and try to make it be there. I have such an incredible appreciation for this journey and for the freedom. And if I've given anybody a little bit of hope that maybe you can stay here for another 24 hours and not use, then I think I did what I'm supposed to do. Thanks for letting me share.